In this video, we're going to be looking at histograms, so exploring a bit more specifically in histograms, but in particular sort of identifying what a histogram is, and also making sure that you understand how you can construct and analyze a histogram. So firstly, what is a histogram? Okay, so a histogram is a graphical representation, I'll get you to write this down, is a graphical representation of a frequency table so that patterns can be more easily observed. So it can be used when the items are numerical, and we'll get to what types of data these are quite good for later on. But it's important to understand that there's sort of graphical representation of a frequency table. And the vertical axis, which is this one on the side here, which is we call the y-axis, is used to represent the frequency of each item. So here we have an example. We've got a frequency table, and you can see that we've got our sort of number there, which we've set out here on the x-axis, and then we've got our frequency set up here on the left or the y-axis. Now, as you can see, just by looking at the histogram, we get a better idea of how to analyze this data. So we know that numbers sort of 3 and 0, they're almost double the other one. So we start to pick up patterns a lot easier in a histogram rather than simply a frequency table. So you might want to be asking, they look very similar to a bar graph, and yes, that is true, but there are some key differences here. And a histogram is similar to a bar graph, but groups things into ranges, okay? So we're looking at ranges. So if we look here at the example of the histogram, you'll see that it's separated into different range numbers, where if we're looking at a bar graph, it's a bit more of that discrete data, where it can be sort of just categories, and then you sort of list it off there. You also notice a key difference is that there's gaps. So in a bar graph, there are gaps in between, but in a histogram, there is no gaps in between. And that's because we're using ranges, remember? So in this case, the range here is anything between 100 and 150, anything between 150 and 200. We can sort of use those ranges to help give our frequency, etc. But when you're using a bar graph, you're simply just using that only the frequency of that category. Now, so it's great, therefore, for continuous numerical data. Now, that's a key thing I want you to make sure you write down. It's great for continuous numerical data, and that's how we use it. And as I said before, there's no gaps usually in between with the histogram. So let's do a couple of examples here. We've got example one. We're going to actually construct a histogram based on the frequency table, and I'll sort of show you how we do that. So here we go, we've got our frequency table based on the number of siblings. It might have been a survey done at a school, and we have 0 to 3, and then we got our frequency here on the left. So what that looks like is that you set your, as we said, your frequency here on the side, okay? And what you want to do is you want to get the idea of the range of data. So our lowest here is 2, and our highest here is 20. So as you can see on this graph that we've created, we want to have a data just slightly above the highest point and also the lowest point. So you range your scale going up in 5s. I thought that would be the best way. And then you have your siblings down the bottom. So you can see our histogram there based on that. The second one would be a good example here of sort of number of words in a story. And now we start to see a range. And again, we're going to use the frequency here on the y-axis. And therefore, we need to sort of set out a good range of data based on the number of words here. And I'm going to go from 0 to 100. So this is what it looks like. We'll set that up there. You can see that we've got the frequency here on the y-axis going up again. I've seen that the top number is 12, the lowest number is 2. So my highest point needs to be just slightly higher than 12, and I've got that set up at 14. And then I've just arranged my data down the bottom here, or my ranges, sorry, from 0 to 100. So anything that fits into that range, I can simply just tick off on the intervals, and that's how you construct a histogram. So histograms, again, are easy to help with that continuous numerical data, and also a good representation, particularly when we're using frequency. So make sure you write all those key points down, and thanks.